Eugene Peterson said, the Deuteronomy reason for Sabbath keeping is that our ancestors in Egypt went for 400 years without a vacation. Never a day off. The consequence, they were no longer considered persons but slaves. Hands, work units, not persons created in the image of God, but equipment for making bricks and building pyramids. Humanity was defaced. I love this picture of, I had my professor in college that would say, every truth can be plumbed deeper, applied more widely, and seen in coherent relations with other truths. Meaning, we can take a scripture, Jesus wept. It's a really fun one to memorize. Jesus wept, and I can say, well, what does this verse mean in the context? And then I can say, well, what does this verse mean in relationship to the law? And it's like putting a frame on the passage, and it means something. It's not that it means something different. It just, all of a sudden, it's so much bigger than what I could possibly conceive. And so I love this language here of that one of the frames that we can put on the person of Jesus as he's moving is that Jesus tells his disciples, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And so what we realize is that the narrative that the Father has been orienting his chosen people to their whole existence is actually the narrative of, I made you in my image. Humanity has been made in the image of God. Now, can we pause for a second? There's a part of it, and I love this, there's a part of it I understand that. And I could probably tell you all the theology, maybe not some of the theology about what that means. And then I start living practically, experientially, and I'm like, I don't know if I get that at all. What does it mean that we were made in the image of God? And the frame around Jesus entering, because it says when the fullness of time, he sent his son, right? His son came and he was incarnated and he tabernacled among his people. And part of what he was doing was communicating to a group of people that this is probably more their experience. That every power structure, when we talk about oppression, I love it. When we talk about idols, what is the Lord teaching the Israelites when he starts talking about idolatry? That what idolatry is trying to accomplish, it is to dehumanize you. At every turn, in our cultural context, I love his language of the phone. We were just talking about this, that they're talking about the addiction. The phone addiction is skyrocketing right now. And it's an anxiety disorder, and it's this low-level anxiety that is perpetually happening. And it's this place, what is the phone done to our humanity? That's a fascinating question. And the testimony we hear frequently when we talk to people in our season of life with littles is they'll say, well, I take my kids over to my parents' house and they just sit on their phone the whole time. This retired age, they just sit on their phone. And they're grieving as they're talking with us about it. And so it's this fascinating. So it's this fascinating place. Is it doesn't matter what season of life you're in. The desire is to move our face, and what happens when our face gets moved is inevitably we will always become an it to whatever that thing is we're serving. That's what the Lord's talking about in idolatry. That's why I love the language. Even if I become the it and I'm serving these words that tell me how to live and become a Christian, I actually lose my humanity in the process. And so we've been talking in layers and layers, right? So let me just say this practically. We talked about a month ago, we were talking about Jesus prays for the guy twice. And it's a prophetic picture of the Lord saying, there's something more I want you to come alive with. And then we started to talk about Jesus, and the harvest comes in, and he says, pray for the laborers. The harvest is plentiful. Pray for the laborers. And we really started to flesh out what does this mean. And we talked last week about Sabbath is revolutionary because Sabbath is the invitation to come back and declare, I was made in the image of God. I want to learn what it means to carry the image of God. That the cultural context is so strong of dehumanization that I lose sight of the glory that the Lord says, I made you in my image and I did not make a mistake. So Jesus was, once again, I have been discipled in a cultural context that has told me this is what being a human is. You ascend, you become successful, you become, and there all of these, all right, we don't have to belabor that. Sometimes in the church context, I can say, this is what being in the image of God, you're a Christian, and this is what a good Christian looks like. Because this is what they believe, and this is how they behave, and this is what they do. There's a measure of righteousness on that. Jesus is coming into the context of an Old Testament system that had dehumanized people, not because the system was wrong, but because the system was always trying, or the Lord gave the law, intending it to move you to His heart, into relationship with Him. But the system became a set of procedures that ultimately dehumanizes us. So I love this language here, that after the Exodus is God's movement of Israel saying, may I teach you what it means to be human. And we see in the book of Matthew that Jesus is the new Moses. In the heights of the structure of we now know how to be a good Jewish man or woman. We know how to be a good Christian man or woman. We teach you what it means to be human again, is what Jesus is doing. Jesus is holding the definition of what humanity looks like, which is why the danger of a religious idol is so seductive, because I can try and make myself look like what I think it's supposed to look like. We tracking so far? Okay, so Jesus has got these disciples. He's literally walking with these disciples, and He's inviting them into a new humanity. Even the language of freedom. Sometimes I think freedom is the ability to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And Jesus says, that's not freedom, son. That's not freedom. That's actually just a different level of oppression. So, I say all that to say, that's a side note. But there's this passage, would you go to Matthew 14? There's this passage, and this is in the liturgical calendar for today, so I love the reality that millions upon millions of people are sitting in this story today. So I'm going to read it, and I very simply want to give 3 thoughts. Okay? Very brief. Because I am, if nothing else, a brief man. No laughing, Rachel. Anyway, this is out of Matthew 14. And immediately, Jesus made His disciples get into the boat and go before Him to the other side while He sent the multitudes away. And when He had sent the multitudes away, He went up on the mountain by Himself to pray. And now when evening came, He was alone there. But the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now in the 4th watch of the night, Jesus went to them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw Him walking on the sea, they were troubled. It actually says they were terrified. It is a ghost! And they cried out for fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, be of good cheer, it is I, do not be afraid. And Peter answered him and says, okay, Lord, if it's you, command me to come out to you on the water. So Jesus says, come on. My translation would be, He said, come with it. And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, Lord, save me! And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and he caught him and he said to him, "Oh, you of little faith, why do you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." Famous passage. We okay? Let's go back. I want 3 thoughts. There's a million ways that we've seen, and you guys have probably seen it. Peter screwed up when he took his eyes off of Jesus. Great sermon. That one's done. We got it. You know, it's the courage for Peter to get out of the boat while all the other disciples were in the boat. Courage is actually what it's about. Great sermon. We finished that one. That one's done with. There's 3 things I think there's 3 movements in this story that I just want to let it breathe. Can I use that language? Okay. 28 to 31. 28 to 31. Nope, I lied. That's not it. Sorry, forgive me. There it is. 22 to 27. That's what it is. He says, "Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, where he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he then goes up on a mountain by himself, and he's praying. And then when evening comes, he looks out, verse 24, and the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary." I just love that language. The wind is moving against them. Come on, do you guys ever feel like that? Jesus gives you a directive, and you start to go, and all of a sudden it's like all hell breaks loose. Now in the 4th watch of the night, Jesus went into them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It's a ghost!" And they cried out for fear. But immediately Jesus speaks to them. Now here's the fun thing about the Greek here, saying, "Be of good cheer. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid." And it says, "It is I, do not be afraid." The word there is "I am." That's the language he's using. So he's walking on the water, and they cry out, "This is a ghost. This is an apparition." But I love this language of, in the midst of their fear, in the midst of the normalcy, and I think this is ultimately, why is Matthew putting this story in? Because I think it's describing so many different levels. But one of the levels it's describing is the normal human experience. So this is part of why I love what Marvin was talking about. Because be honest with you, there are moments where the idol in my mind becomes what it's supposed to look like when I do the Christian faith journey. I learned how to pray because the prayer got answered. And then I did the same thing here and it didn't get answered, and now I don't know what to do with that. And sometimes, I know none of us, sometimes then I'm having to bully myself to believe something when the reality is I'm like, this is I don't even know what I feel about this. I'm really trying to navigate how I feel about the God thing. I'm trying to navigate how I feel about the relationships. I'm not even sure. I know the truth, but there's something in here that's disconnected. And I love this picture that Jesus is up on the mountain, and he looks down and he sees that all of the circumstances are pushing against the direction the disciples are trying to go. That what love looks like is it enters that space and it says, "I am." It gives the invitation. I love this language. At this point, he's not addressing the wind being against them. He's not addressing how hard they're struggling. All he's doing is being present in the circumstances. He says, "Take courage, be of good cheer. I am, do not be afraid." In the Jewish context, the water, any body of water, it represented the unpredictable cosmic chaos, danger, and forces opposite of God. So the layers here are fascinating. The water was the great untamable beast. Right? We see this biblically that in Revelation, before the throne of God, it's a sea of glass. It has finally been ultimately tamed. And now it's just shalom. We okay? But in the practicals of normal life, the wind was working against them, building the waves up, and it represented the entire space of how it's supposed to work versus the reality of it. How it's supposed to work versus the real life experience of it. So Jesus is taking these disciples and he's pulling them aside and he's saying, okay, you go to the other side of the lake. I want to teach you something about practically what it means to be a laborer in the field. Because the romantic side says, they just came from this, Jesus entrusts them with his authority, they go out, things start happening, they come back and they go, everything worked like you said. Demons responded, people got saved, healed, delivered. It was unbelievable. To the point that Jesus has just fed the 5,000 prior to this, and then he says, disciples, go to the other side of the lake. The wind is working against them now. Now we're in the reality of it, not the illusion of it. The reality is crashing upon them, and Jesus begins to walk atop that which is untamable. Do you see it? Be honest though, there's this part of me that goes, well, that's what Jesus now is inviting me into. That I can escape and ascend to heavenly places and never experience the waves again. And what happens quietly is Peter's story becomes, he just took his eyes off Jesus. I just need and I evaluate how Peter did based on the fact that it didn't work like obviously Jesus was doing. Are we tracking so far? Decent sermon. Not bad. I think there's something else here that Jesus is getting at, though. And there's something actually way more earthy, way less sexy, but way more real. The wind was moving against them. Ready? This is the first movement. It's setting the stage where you have this moment of like, Jesus, it's not working. And I become aware. He's walking on the water. Oh, he's sovereign. He's amazing. He's in control. And then we have this story here, the next section, 28. And Peter answers him and goes, okay, Lord, if it's you, command me to come out on the water with you. And Jesus says, come on. When Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. If I was writing the story, I'd end it there. Whoa. Come on. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid, and he began to sink as he cried out, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretches out his hand, and he catches him, and he says to him, oh, you of little faith. And that word there just means underdeveloped faith. It's not size. There's a part of this that your faith just needs developed. Why did you doubt me? My second point, I love the picture of humanity that Peter is. Because, man, it is a mixture. Be honest. It is a mixture of two realities. The courage and the faith to come down out of the boat into the unknown. Peter is a manifestation of love on full display. If that's you, Lord, I got to be as near to you as I possibly can. And be honest, sometimes when the crashing of the waves happens, the courage is saying, Jesus, I know you're inviting me to shalom. That is not, I need to get to you, though. Because if I can get to you, I know I can get to shalom. We okay so far? I am so disillusioned with my effort and my ability to row across the lake. The courage of Peter is this is the best and the worst of what love is. In this, I don't mean the worst. I mean it is the height of strength of love, and it is what the limit of love is in myself. Peter is humanity on display. That the highest realm we have, often, if not every time, is blended. Come on. I operate in this moment when the wave, I've never seen these waves before, they start to crash. He just watched them feed 5,000 people. He's watching them walk on the water. The highest I have is, but these waves are scary as crud. Come on. Tell me this doesn't normalize the human experience. The gift that Peter gives us right now, the gift, is that the limits of where my zealous faith can take me. Peter gets out of the boat and he begins to walk on the water. It's going great, it's going great, it's going great. That was a big wave. That one really picked up. You guys ever have it where it's punches? Come on. Sometimes it's financial. Sometimes it's relational. Sometimes it's spiritual. I'm doing good. I sustained. And then a punch hits and I'm like, usually it just exposes how fragile I am. Like I'm like walking on water. And then my kid does something. They spill something. And I'm like, what are you doing? You know, flipping the tables. So, that might have been an overreaction right there. Just me? Thank you guys. Man, I'm so grateful. It's safe space. But the beauty is that Peter, there is the gift of what Peter is doing is, this is what love does. I just need to be near him. So Jesus comes, his presence says, I am. Peter says, I just got to be near him. There's something that awakens when the I am comes. I just got to be near him. But what happens is at this point is where sometimes the illusion and the romance actually becomes the idol that moves us into shame, moves us out of his presence into something else. We okay? So we have this picture of Peter, the risk and the courage to move against the limit. And not against the limit, but to say he's going to move in. Okay. I love this language that Jesus is standing here saying, I am, equally inviting Peter out of the comfort of the boat to become human. To become human in the midst of that blended place where he no longer is in charge of this is how it presents. And then lastly, so he pulls him in and says, oh, you, Peter. Well, basically, we just got to develop this a little bit further. 32. And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. I love this line, though, because I think this is it. Then those who were in the boat came and they worshiped him. They worshiped Jesus, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. This isn't Pentecost where Peter gives a great sermon and thousands are being added to their number daily. This is the truth of relationship. Peter gets out in all his blended form, operating in the highest realm he knows, takes a couple steps, falls on his face, some would say falls on his butt, says, Lord help me, I screwed it up again. And it's so, the courage to do that so moved the disciples, they entered a place of worship that they had never experienced before. Come on! In the midst of the fragility of Peter's faith, just his willingness to get outside of himself. This is so uncomfortable. Man was not made to walk on water. Be honest. Because of the fall, I was not made to stand before you and be vulnerable. It is way more comfortable to stay on the boat and stay hidden. And the Lord says, would you come out? Would you just come out with me? It's way more comfortable to just stay in my fortress of solitude that I've developed where I understand it. I've done my journey with the Lord. I know what the Lord is like with me, and I don't want to be uncomfortable in any way. And he says, would you get out of the boat with me? And what happens is when I get out of the boat, now all of a sudden there's new anxiety, new fear, new torment, new places where we're touching things that I don't like. Doggone it. But love compels me to find him. There's something that awakens in Peter Peter's not trying to be a leader. Peter is just going, I got to get to him. He gets to him in the midst of it, and he screws it up. Because why? He takes his stinking eyes off the Lord. But it's not the shame-inducing thing that I think sometimes in a performance culture we want to say that it is. Jesus is going, well done, and he grabs his hand. None of the other disciples got to stand on water and touch Jesus' hand. That's not a negation. That's just saying Peter, in this awakening hunger, caught something. Just so we're on the same page. First point. Jesus says, I am, directly to their fear. Sometimes the waves that push against you are the very limits where fear is meant to rise up, because Jesus needs to say, be not afraid. I need to speak to that. Second point, it's the two great commandments. We love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and I'm learning to love my neighbor as myself. If that is our focus, I want to learn how to become love, then the limits are your gift to get beyond yourself and let the person who knows what humanity really looks like to teach us how to love. Does this make sense? Okay. Forgive me. First point, Jesus speaks directly to their fear with I am. Second point, love moves me to risk in order to be where Jesus is at. That's my second point. My third point, the gift, when I live courageously in the best place I know, where I'm just present courageously with where I'm living, it will literally shift the atmosphere. Something happens in the atmosphere when my heart is willing to show up. Hello, my love. Oh, you're good. Third point, the gift of living courageously to those around me, the atmosphere shifts. Paul says it differently in Colossians 1, where he says, as we're doing this love journey, I get the privilege of filling up what is lacking in your understanding of the sacrifice of Christ. The honor and the privilege to get to do the journey with one another. Peter, before Christ was crucified, Peter got to step out, and it was actually in his blended, quote-unquote, screw-up. It literally catapulted. This is how you know it's Holy Spirit. It so works against our cultural norm, where I think my excellence and I did it right, I prayed the right prayer, the Spirit of God came. Jesus is trying to I think he's trying to invite them into the gift of humanity. It's not polished. It's clunky and it's awkward. Peter gets out of the boat, he begins to walk, he goes under the water, and yet something in the atmosphere of the boat shifts. As soon as they get back in the boat, the wind stops. What was working against them stops. What does that mean? 1,000 things. I like to think, there's a part of me that goes, oh, Peter's willingness to not have the answer It invited a different realm of Jesus meeting him in that place, and that which was aimed against them got broken. And now shalom rests. You guys ever have it where there's like something in the atmosphere and one person, like if you're in a conversation with a group of people at a table, and you're kind of like, it's not a bad conversation. I don't know if we've found each other's hearts yet, and I definitely don't know if we've found the Lord yet. And often, I'm just going to speak it, Naj does this beautifully. If you have a conversation with Naj and she'll say, I don't know if that's really what I think. And she'll share this beautiful thing of like an honest expression of where she's at. Not oversharing, because this is the beauty of Naj. She has no desire to have to overshare and like, she just shares authentically. And something prophetically gets released that moves the atmosphere of the table, the room, to a different place of the presence of God. It's a magnet for the tenderness of the Lord. I've known that woman for almost 20 years, and she has always been like that. To be able to articulate authentically and honestly in the best realms we know. She has modeled for me what Peter getting out of the boat looks like. And I'm telling you, the atmosphere shifts, and now worship and revelation come because someone was willing to bring the best of their expression without the facade of trying to do it right. And it was clunky and it was awkward. Come on. The anointing of clunky and awkward. Naj is never clunky and awkward. I actually want to offer that what Jesus is teaching his disciples, can I teach you how to be human? It's rarely polished. If we're really being honest, rarely polished. More often than not, it's not standing atop the mountain saying, come to me. It's saying, man, I found him. I saw somebody be willing to go to that place. I was so moved. Can I tell you that the Son of God, who's come to take away the sins of the world, he's here. I just love this picture of the celebration. It's the celebration of a God, a Jesus, who meets Peter as he's sinking because he calls out, Lord, save me. And it's Peter without trying to, in the highest realm of his humanity, modeling the two great commandments. We're going to take communion on this. My friends, on the night that he was betrayed, this is all what Jesus is doing. On the night he was betrayed, come on. On the night he was betrayed, he has had one who he has let into his heart. And this one did not like how it was going. And so Judas was trying to help Jesus by talking to the religious leaders. On the night he was betrayed, he took the bread and he broke it. I would offer another way of saying it's really clunky. Giraffes on ice. To learn how to be human takes a long time. And to be willing to do it with other people, in my opinion, probably by far the most vulnerable thing you'll ever do is to be willing to be broken before each other. To say quickly, I'm so sorry, I didn't know, I didn't mean to. Please help me learn how to love you. He took the bread and he broke it and he said, this is my body. It's broken for you. That our participation in this, in my humble opinion, is not necessarily so that we can walk above the chaos of it all. It's actually so that we can receive Him when we start to sink. That's the gift of humanity right now. One day, the sea will be glass. Right now, the picture is, Jesus is not saying, come up and you'll never have to deal with a wave. He's saying what you know is that when the wave starts to overwhelm you, which it will, the gift is that I will be there to grab you and say, let's keep developing your faith. He takes the bread and he breaks it and he says, this is my body broken for you. He takes the cup, gives thanks, he blesses it, and he says, this is my blood shed for you for the remission of sins. That the blood that speaks a better the blood that speaks a better word would be able to define your experience. Even if right now you're saying, I resonate with Peter being under the water. And all I know how to do is cry out, Lord, help me. He says, that's what my blood is speaking.